Okay, one of the new things in MarcEdit 7 is the ability to automatically harvest and process, or automatically process JSON files without actually having to know how to process JSON files. So I have an example file, and I'm going to pop it up in Oxygen really quick. And so while that's happening, I will go ahead and open the part in MarcEdit. So starting in 70141, MarcEdit tools, there's an operation here in the XML harvester, or the XML functions. It's called the XML Function Wizard. I've already created one, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what the process looks like. So this tool originally, when MarcEdit was created, handled just XML data. It was always intended to be able to handle both XML and JSON data. I got my first set of vendor data, an example of vendor data that's actually in JSON. So here's one record. This is actually what it looks like. It's a large record of roughly about 7,800 titles, all broken up into JSON. So the process is you either know how to work with JSON, or you can use the function wizard. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through all the steps, and then I'll import the translation that I've already created. So you go ahead and start the wizard. So in this case, I'm going to call this custom to JSON to Mark. I go ahead and select the file that I'm going to process against. This lets MarcEdit profile the file so that you can figure out, so that you can map the data, and it can understand what it's looking at. So in this case, I'll go ahead and grab the file. And then where am I going to put the profile? So in my system, I've been creating custom profiles into its own folder. So I'm going to overlay on top of the one that already exists. But I'm going to go ahead and import it too, so you can see what it looks like. So I'll go to the next step. It reads the JSON file, just reads a couple of roots, and so it gives you the root object, and then it goes down one level, and then this underneath there's no other levels. So titles is the array that has all the records in it. This is the actual record itself. So I would select the record, an example of a record element, and then I go to the next step. And what you'll see is MarcEdit breaks that record into a flat file. And so I'm going to go ahead and load my template. So this is the translation I've already created. So I'm going to go ahead and load my profile, and you can see that in the arguments area, MarcEdit loads the arguments and it maps field to mark field. And essentially, for those of you who have used the delimited text translator, it uses the same function. So if you go down here, you can see this one I put in the wrong spot, so I'm going to go ahead and move that up. I can go down here and see there's another one, so I can go ahead and move that up. Whoops. Down and click that. There we go. Select that one and move that one up. And then click it, and then you can see that I've joined a mapped value with a constant data record. I've created an 856, and I've got a 655 that I can move up. Move that up. Alright, so I've got my values. I can tell it to calculate non-filing digits, sort digits, what have you. And when I'm done mapping all my data, and again, it's just like the delimited text translator, I would select my value from here, and then tell it which mark field I was going to put it in, any indicator or terminal punctuation, whether the field repeats or not. I go ahead and proceed to the next step. And what happens then is when I go back to the MarcEditor here, you will find now that this file has been created. I've actually created a profile based on the delimited text values that I've mapped. And so now I can go get that JSON file back. Get that JSON file back, and I can output it as a mark record. And go ahead and execute it. And it'll take a minute because the file obviously has to load the JSON. It does all of the translates it to the flat file format. It does the conversion of data and then translates it to mark. And so here we have 7,858 records. There probably are limits in terms of the size of JSON file it can handle, partly because the approach that I'm taking requires it to actually load the JSON file in its entirety so that it can match the data against the profile that's been created. So that's going to create some practical limits in terms of memory. But to be honest, if you're trying to translate a JSON file that large, you probably should be doing it with some other process to begin with. But this should get people through, I hope, handling most kind of JSON data that they're going to interact with from vendors. I'd be comfortable working with this up to record sets into the 500,000 file size, where potentially you're working with data that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 500 megabytes in size. That should be fine. It's going to take some time, but it'll be fine to process with. But that's the new functionality of the wizard. I think that this actually completes and closes the loop of what was left to be done, where the tool had the XML profiling, which does the exact same thing. You select the record node, it profiles the data, you map it through delimited process, and then it'll run just the same way. Now you can do the same thing with JSON data, allowing catalogers who may know what JSON is, may not be particularly familiar with how to process it, the capacity to be able to take those data records and turn them into Marc or translate them into other formats. So hopefully that'll be helpful for folks. And if you end up having other types of suggestions, let me know.